The Bristle Brush is one of the new tools you'll find inside of Illustrator CS5. And I've asked my mascot Hannibal here to help us demonstrate it. We're going to give him a mohawk whether he likes it or not. So he's going to be the Mr. T of Elephant shortly. But before we get to him, I'm going to create a brand new document so we can look at the Bristle Brush itself. Well, if you choose the brush tool, you might be wondering where the Bristle Brush lives. Well, what we can do is go to our brush palette or panel and tear it off if you want to, and you'll see that by default we have one here. This is a bristle brush. Now that's really hard to say that, so I'm probably messing it up, so don't laugh too hard. Bristle Brush, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and click, and then when I paint, you'll see that we have a very natural media style stroke, the type of stroke that you'd find in Photoshop or in Corel Painter. But there are more types of strokes available to us. And we can also make our own brush, which I'll show you in the next part. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at how this guy works. So let's create a brand new brush. We're going to click right here where it says New Brush. And in the dialog box that appears, we can choose Bristle Brush as one of the categories. That's really fun to say that fast. When we do this, we are taken to the Bristle Brush options. And you can name your brush if you like, and you can choose your shape. As you can see, you have a round point, round blunt, and some fans here. The way these different categories work is they're based on the length of the bristles and also the stiffness and the size and so on. So we have this thing that holds the bristles called a ferrule or a ferrule, and the brushes come out of that. All right, so the things that we change here will determine how this brush length and stiffness interact with this holder here. So we can change the size of the brush. We can change the length of the bristles. All right, so that will make the brush length go from short to long from the ferrule, like so. We can change the density, which gives us more hairs or less hairs inside of the brush. We can change the thickness. We can change the opacity. And we can change the stiffness. This is how flexible or rigid the brush will be. Now imagine taking a brush that's hard and trying to paint with it. And then you dip it in some water, and then the brush, of course, gets a little softer. So I'm going to go ahead and say OK. And then I'll grab my brush and we'll paint. And you'll notice something interesting about my cursor here. Because I'm using a Wacom tablet or a digital tablet, I'm able to see a profile of my brush in real time. So as I move my hand around, the bristles tell me what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately for you guys who have a regular mouse, you're not going to see this. But don't worry, you can still use this tool. Interesting thing about the bristle brush, by the way, is that it will add on to the last stroke. So I'll paint over this last one, and you'll see that it gets darker and darker. Okay, that's a really important thing to remember, because you'll be able to lay on the paint, as it were. So I'm going to go back to this brush here, and I'll make a couple of strokes. And I'll choose this new one here, and you can see that we can get some really cool variation. So why would you use this brush? Well, you can use it to make grass, to make fur, to make hair, to create a watercolor effect or an oil painting effect. It depends on the type of brush you build yourself. And it's really important to remember that. Now, let's go back and take a look at how we can add some hair to our mascot here. But you might be asking yourself, well, we only have 2 brushes. That could be kind of boring. I want more than 2 brushes. Well, don't worry about that, because if you go right to our little menu here, we can go to the Bristle Brush category and open up an entire library. And now you have a ton of brushes to choose from. All you have to do is take a quick look over here at the icon, and you can see the brush you have. And if you hover your mouse, you see the type of brush. Angle, okay, you have bright, you have all kinds of stuff in here. So I'll grab an angle brush, and I'll see what it looks like when I paint. Now, something else important to mention before we head to the next part. The bristle brush itself is not dependent on this guy right here. We're not going to be dealing with this fill color. the bristle brush works with the stroke color. So you can always feel free to get rid of the stroke, and you can give it a color of your choice. So now that we have orange, I'm painting with orange. So that's something that's a little hard to get used to because we're so used to painting with the fill color. So let's head over to the next part and talk about how to save our own profile up here and give this guy a mohawk.